Hey YouTube, Do-It-Yourself Junkie 369, and I believe today is day 81 of our RV-10 build. I accidentally messed up my log a little bit, and I threw in a couple days where I was doing some research, and normally I don't count those. I keep track of the time, but I don't put them in the log as a day, so it doesn't advance my day counter that I have going down the left side of that Excel spreadsheet, which is linked below in the description. Anyway, I'm still working on the tail cone, and today I'm going to continue working on deburring this, get it deburred, get it drilled, and then from there it looks like I start doing some of the longerons cut out of the Z channels. If I get tired of deburring, I might skip to that just so I'm doing something else and breaking up the monotony of deburring. Deburring gets kind of repetitive for me. Even riveting, like riveting this, I had to take breaks. I mean, about every 2 hours I had to go, whether I was quitting or not for the day, I just had to go and do something else. And if I had thought about it, I could have taken a break from riveting and started prepping these pieces and moving ahead to the next section. You need to break up the monotony. You can't sit here and do the same stuff over and over again. So I'm going to shut up now and get to work. That way I'm not out here wasting time just talking to you guys, which is, it's good for audience interaction, but I mean, you came here to watch me build an aircraft, not listen to me talk. Unless there's something that you'd like me to talk about, in which case leave a comment and I'll talk about it. Right now, most interaction I've had with somebody is concerning dandelions, and I like it. I made the comment I was having trouble with dandelions. He responded. I responded a couple times saying what I was doing, and last night he sent a great response. Must have taken forever for him, or I assume it was a guy. If you're not, I'm sorry. But he took quite a, I guess I should say they took quite a while to write out a response on how to take care of my dandelion problem. Totally not airplane related, but it kind of goes back to what this channel is all about, which was sharing information. And based on what he wrote, he's definitely an expert in the field of taking care of these nasty weeds. And the response for me gives me valuable information. Now, and it helps me out a lot. I mean, I'm happy that this person responded, and I'm thankful that they did. It had a lot of useful information in there. I haven't responded back. I talked about using Roundup on my yard to get rid of dandelions, and he warned me that Roundup is not a discriminate. Basically, Roundup can't target broadleaf weeds. It will turn your grass brown, and that is true, as far as I know, to a certain extent. The stuff that I picked up from the store the other day, while it is a Roundup brand, it is something I've never seen out of Roundup before, and it supposedly targets well, dandelions obviously, clover, and crabgrass. I think were like the main three. There was another one on there, but it's something that I don't think I have to worry about. And so normally Roundup would kill weeds, grass, everything. It doesn't care. This stuff supposedly only targets those weeds. I've never seen this product on the shelf before, so it might be something new. And so I was just going to drop a response of like, hey, this is what I got. Not sure if it's as good as the stuff he was recommending to get. As long as it probably is okay as long as it has the certain active ingredients that he was saying that it needs. I guess I'll use it since I've already purchased it and used some of it. See how it does, and if it doesn't work, I'll definitely be going with this guy's this person's recommendation, because one, he took the time to reply to me. Two, based on his response, he definitely knows what the heck he's talking about. And I am kind of shooting in the dark here, trying to get rid of this stuff. I mean, it's frustrating. At the same time though, my yard does look pretty nice compared to the neighbors. And I'm in kind of a spot where like the house had been empty for a year, maybe more. The lawn neglected. So while this seems to be a never-ending problem, I'm definitely making progress. And if I ever get the lawn recovered and grass growing back in thick enough like it should be, the dandelion problem should kind of be choked out, because they aren't able to grow in those conditions. Right now, basically, some of the grass died out because it wasn't being taken care of. The previous owners had planted some stuff in flower beds that just spread like crazy, and after they moved out, it spread outside the flower beds and took over the yard a little bit. And when that was cleared out, the grass was gone because this stuff had overgrown it and just killed it all off. And then the dandelions, grass grew in, but because it was thinned, dandelions were easily able to take hold because there's so many in other people's yards. And then at that point, the dandelions have been kind of keeping the grass thin. So I'm trying to kill off the dandelions and get the lawn reseeded or overseeded and get the grass growing in nice and thick. And eventually, I've been making progress, it's just been slow. But eventually I should hit a point where my dandelion problem is very minimal and just minor upkeep, rather than a full-blown epidemic that I have on my hands now, where there are several of these things all over the yard that require blanket treatment of the entire yard versus just spot treatment. But it's nowhere like it was originally, and kind of how the neighbors' yards still look, because they never really put in a lawn when they built the house. They just bulldozed a whole bunch of woods and then let whatever grow in the dirt, so they ended up with a ton of dandelions, so their yard right now looks like it's covered in snow. It is that thick in their yard. And before they turn into those nice little puffballs that kids like to blow on, their yard is more yellow than green. And in the winter, it's brown. So luckily, I'm doing better than that. In this one, I'm using sandpaper instead of the Scotch-Brite to deburr. Just seems to be faster, easier. The Scotch-Brite just seems to be ripped to shreds on this, a lot more than the sandpaper is. One's not necessarily better than the other. Just be careful what kind of sandpaper you're using when you make that selection. And I saw it one place earlier when doing the elevators, I believe, where it talks about roughing up the aluminum skin so that the Pro Seal sticks when you're gluing in the foam ribs. And it says, like, make sure you use, I believe it was aluminum oxide sandpaper. And it's probably due to, if you got something else, it would react with the aluminum and cause the similar metal corrosion, which you don't want. You especially don't want to use that sandpaper to create scratches and voids in the metal, because that's really what you're doing. There's nothing to be worried about. It's just a roughed up surface, so stuff adheres better. But whatever's on that sandpaper or whatever it's made out of, that's coming loose from the paper while you're doing this, and it will become embedded in those scratches. And maybe when you're cleaning it before priming it, or you didn't clean it at all because you didn't prime it with acetone or alcohol, whatever you use, like maybe you didn't use it, maybe you did use it, but for whatever reason you didn't clear that stuff out, and certain materials don't go so well together, and you want to try to avoid that. Okay, you might have noticed I didn't drill any of the holes down here on the bottom. That is because you're told not to. And so now that step is complete, and we get to start cutting the J channels. Okay, so you have six 6-foot J channels and 6 8-foot J channels. Hopefully, when you cut this piece earlier, you cut it out of the 6-foot J channel, because the pieces getting cut out of the 8-foot J channel are 90 inches. They're pretty close to 9 or close to 8 feet. This piece was 6.5 inches. The long pieces that you cut are 90 inches. Yeah, if you try to cut this piece earlier in this section out of the 8-foot J channel, you're going to be ordering a new 8-foot J channel, because those pieces need almost that entire 8 feet. Cut it out of the 6-foot J channel, you'll be fine. One of your pieces are as short as 50 inches, which is right there. So you actually have quite a bit of J channel left over. So the rule of cut stuff out of the shortest material, or material that's already cut, kind of applies. So first J channel I cut is going to be out of this piece that's already cut. Kind of sticking to that rule. And that just kind of helps you avoid ending up with a piece that's too short. And since each one of these, there's 12 in total, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different dimensions that you're cutting them to. I will be putting the book back up here to where I can easily reference it. So I won't be able to get the 68-inch piece out here, but I can get the 53-inch piece. So I've double checked the dimension, or the mark I just made. And now we'll make the cut. And once this piece is cut, I'm going to label it and mark it off there. That way I know that it's complete and not to make another one. That way I don't end up accidentally making a mistake and making too many of one piece. I'm going to go ahead and label both sides of the plastic, because one of these gets pulled off later on during the installation, and I can't remember which side it is. Okay, so step 2, you have to cut a 45 into the ends of this, and I was a little bit worried about doing that, but it turns out it's fairly simple. Just take your, I guess you'd call this a straight edge or an angle or whatever, set it to 45 degrees. You might notice that that is not 45, that's actually 180 minus 45 or 90 plus 45, so 135. The angle 45 is here on this edge, but the way I'm drawing it, I need this to be at that angle. And then your J channel here has a flat edge and then this J hook. The side that's getting cut is the J. And basically, see if I can get a good angle to show you what's going on here. I'm putting this against the top of the J and then just sliding it down until it intersects with the edge here, and then draw a line across that, and boom, you have your line to cut along. It's that easy. So, as usual, the fear of doing something is actually probably worse than the actual doing it. And just to make sure I was giving you guys good advice on how to do that, I actually already cut 2 to try it out. And I'll put a little plastic back so it's visible. That is what you want to end up with. Next step, it says deburr all the edges. The plastic's still on there, so I'm not quite sure about doing the long edges, but where I just made these cuts, I'll peel the plastic back just a little bit and at least deburr that. Could remove the plastic all the way, but the next step specifically says pull only one side off because the other plastic will help you slide those pieces through the frames. So I'm really skeptical about peeling all the plastic off just to deburr them, and I don't like deburring with the plastic on it, so I'll just wait to deburr those pieces. Okay, so step one here, you need to cut these to length. And then you're going to mark them where you're going to bend them later, or basically where you're going to clamp them in the vise. And then other than that, you need to drill a hole that's shown down here in the figure. At this point, you got to realize that they are, the view orientation is like this, and you need them to mirror each other. Don't accidentally make both of them the same and end up with a piece that you need to replace. So earlier, when I was in the middle of sawing these, I realized what was going to happen and wanted to make sure that I had these in the correct position to drill that hole. So I just drew an arrow in pointing towards the inboard side, so that I ended up with a mirror, basically mirror arrows, to make sure that I didn't make that mistake of creating two identical pieces. And then when you're marking the distance to the center of the hole, just realize that that dimension is from the back edge here of the bent over portion, or the one leg. Don't measure it from the wrong side. And I mention that because when I marked this piece just now, I did it wrong. And that will result in your mark being off about 1/8 of an inch. Which I don't know exactly what this notch being removed is for, but I can guarantee it's required. After you drill with the number 40, it has you using a 1/4 inch drill bit. That will not be on my tool list because most drill bit kits that you have in your house come with these. And a second ago I said I don't know what it would be for, but I'm pretty sure it's required. Down here in the step, it actually tells you that the notches are to provide clearance for the F1011C horizontal stabilizer attachment bars. So those I believe that is these bars sticking out of the top of this piece, if I'm remembering correctly. So now you know what it's used for, and I should have read a little bit further in the step, and I wouldn't have said that I didn't know. Okay, the next step is to clamp this in a vise right at the line and preload and put a bend in it. That is just under 2 degrees at the mark you made in step 1. I would pay definite attention to figure 2 that shows this notch you cut facing down and the bend going that way. You don't want to put the bend in the wrong direction. So I'll go off screen here just for a second to put this in the vise that I have. And at this point, because these notches, these are unique, so I would go ahead and label them left and right. And currently I'm working on the right one. And this may not seem like a big issue because it's fairly obvious which is which, but I want to make sure that I check against the correct skin. So I just wanted a reminder, check that one on the right skin, check this one on the left skin for the bends that I'm making. Because of the size of this thing, I'm going to have to take some time and clear off my workbench. Somehow I managed to grab the left skin, and that's why I marked my parts. So we'll set that one aside for now and grab the correct one to check my bend. And lining up here, you can see the far end is going to have to move a couple of inches. So even though it's 2 degrees and it sounds like a small amount, you're looking at moving this end about that much. Okay, feel like I got lucky, but once I held it and bent it quite far and just gave it a good whack, that came out perfect, and it just seemed really easy. Hopefully the next one goes that well, and I'll confirm that people are way over worried about doing this step. Now, part of bending this, because it's angled aluminum, it can bend slightly in the direction 90 degrees to your bend. So you probably won't be able to see it on camera, but looking down this piece, there's a slight bend right here where my bend is, kicking it in. So we want this to kick down, but this bending it this way caused it to also bend this way. So we need to put it in the vise and try to straighten that bit out a little bit. It's not a very bad bend, but it's enough. That when you go to attach the skin to it, it might cause it to look funny. So we'll check against the skin there again. That's still good. Rotate it 90 degrees. Look down the edge. And we took the bend out that we didn't want to be there. So this piece is ready to go. You can set it aside and get ready to bend the next piece. And just so you can see what I'm doing over here, I've got this clamped in a soft jawed vise. You can use a metal benchtop vise with some aluminum jaws or some pieces of fabric or leather covering the jaws to keep from marring the aluminum. You clamp the line right on the edge of the vise, put quite a bit pressure going this direction, and then just give it a whack right there next to the vise. Then after a couple of those, pull it out and check it against the skin, and that's all I'm doing. Okay, so that wasn't bent nearly enough. It has about as much as last time to still go, so about that much, about 3 to 4 inches. So tighten it back in there, and closer that I can pull to this and get a lot of leverage and bending action on it, the better. And then that just makes it that just kind of sets the bend. holding way out here and bending won't have near as the effect as holding in close and bending, even though you have to put more force into it and bend it. Okay, that's it. It's bent correctly. Now, same thing, because I was bending it this way, it caused a bend this way. So we just rotate the piece, clamp it in there, and straighten it out. And last time I was able to straighten it just by pulling on it. If you need to, you can use the same process of hitting right next to the joint. And then take it out and sight along the piece and make sure that it is straight. This one's pretty close. There's a little bit of a bend right there for some reason. Okay, that is going to be good. So those two pieces are done. That is going to be it. So piece lays along the edge there and it's perfect. So nothing to worry about bending, making those bends on these pieces. Piece of cake. And that bit right there, that was 2 whole steps that we just completed. And I didn't even realize that I was completing the other step. I actually thought it was still part of the previous step. Sometimes the steps are that easy and that quick. Other times they take a few hours. But for some reason I've heard that that's one item that people worry about is bending these longerons. And as you can see, no issue. That barely took, I want to say it was about 15 minutes once I got out the correct skin piece to check the bend against. Next step, I need to break out some sawhorses and make sure they're tall enough for one thing. Because we're going to start putting the skins on all of the pieces that we've been working on. The longerons, the bulkheads, all of that. Says that the sawhorses must be 38 inches tall. That's so that you have the skin upside down on the sawhorses and the bulkheads hanging off of it. I have a couple sawhorses. I can tell you right now they are probably too short. They are 31 inches tall. They need to be at least 38. I do have blocks of wood over there, and basically I can set those under the sawhorse. I have some blocks of wood like this, quite a few of them from working on my car. And I can just stick them under my sawhorse like that to increase the height from 31 inches to 38 inches. These are about 3.5 inches. I need to increase the height 7 inches. So I need 2 of these blocks under each leg, and I happen to own 10 of them, and I only need 8. The other thing I need is space to line that out, which probably means I need to take this horizontal stabilizer inside and reorganize my tables to give me enough room to build the tail cone in here. because it's going to end up being about this big at one end. And as you saw when I had the skins on the table, it will go from the end of the table to about here. So I at least need to get one table out of the way. I'll probably just shove it up against the other workbench over here and the shelf. But that'll take a few minutes while I reorganize the shop. One thing, while I was putting this on there, there's a bent over edge on this bottom skin. That sits within this cutout. It took me a little while to figure that out, and once I did, it helped getting these aligned properly much easier. I'm on page 7, step 4, which is installing the elevator bell crank ribs. And just remember, because the tail is upside down right now, right is on the left side and left is on the right side. And these go with the flanges to the outside, big end forward, little end aft. So looking at drilling those bell crank ribs, this appears to be an area where this smaller diameter chuck and 90-degree drill will help me get up close to the holes and make sure that I'm perpendicular to the holes I'm drilling in those pieces. And those get drilled out to a number 30. I find it odd that it doesn't say anything about match drilling the holes along the top. I guess we'll see if those are done later. So having an awl or a scribe or something that you can stick in these holes and line up the holes on the bulkheads and frames really helps a lot with riveting on this skin. So I highly recommend having one of those. This happens to be a tool I have, so it's not going to be on the tool list. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to put that and the 1/4-inch drill on the tool list. It'll just be notated that I already had it, so it's not included in the price of what I spent on the aircraft. Second person for this would also help quite a bit, but the kids are getting ready to go to sleep and my wife is getting them ready for bed, so I'm stuck out here by myself. Putting that drill bit away reminds me I need to add 5/16 drill bit to the tool list, because despite what people think, that hole is not drilled to the proper size. You could probably get away with using a taper tap and tapping that hole, but it's just going to increase the amount of force that you have to put into the tap while doing it, and taps are really brittle and they can break. And when you break one, depending on how it breaks, they're a real pain to get out. I will tell you right now, do not even bother trying to drill them out. Drill bits are not going to be tough enough to drill through that hardened metal that the tap is made out of. If you are able to drill a tap, you've either got extremely amazing drill bits of some sort that I can't even imagine what they're made out of. More likely your tap was heat treated improperly and really cheap and a piece of junk. And actually kind of surprised that it would break, because usually the softer metal is, the harder it is to break, and taps break fairly easily because they are so hard and so brittle. You can use a tap remover. If there's a piece of tap sticking out enough to get with vice grips, you can clamp onto it with vice grips and spin it out. There's a couple other suggestions I've seen where people basically are hitting the tap with compressed air out of like a compressed air canister that freezes the tap, and then they hit it and it shatters. In my book, it's just easier to not break the thing by using proper technique and proper taps. On the one that I broke, enough of it was sticking out of the part that I could just grab it with vice grips and reverse it out of there. But it didn't matter because the threads were ruined anyway. So the part was unusable even though I got the tap out of the part. Now, there was some comments that I came across online while I was researching correctly tapping this and breaking taps off there and everything. A lot of people were concerned about the tie down point being a steel eye hook or eye loop being threaded into an aluminum piece. They're worried about that the tear out strength isn't going to be enough. That basically the bolt's just going to rip out of there because it's steel, this is aluminum. How much force could it actually hold? And people were like, oh, it doesn't have to be very much. I mean, even if it's 1,800 pounds, you've got 3 of them, your aircraft only weighs 1,800 pounds, don't worry about it. Plus, it's probably designed to shear out before it bends your wings down, basically. They bring up a really good point. At some point in this whole process, if you have your steel eye bolt, it goes into a steel point. It bolts to something with steel bolts. Well, what's it going to bolt to? Probably something made out of aluminum. At some point in the entire design, it's going to have to attach to something aluminum. And that's a valid, very good point. I mean, it's just what the nature of airplanes. They're made out of aluminum. Otherwise, they would be very heavy and wouldn't get off the ground. Anyway, I would not worry about this being the weak point in your system of tying down your aircraft. I haven't done the math for 3/8 by 16, but 5/16 going into 60/60 6061 aluminum. I believe it was T6 for the heat treat. That has a tear out force of somewhere just north of 15,000 pounds. That's 15,000, not 1,500 pounds, not 1,800 pounds, 15,000 pounds for one of these. And you've got 3 of them on your aircraft. So you're looking at a combined tie down capacity of 45,000 pounds minimum. Remember, that was for a 5/16, these are 3/8, so it would be a little bit higher for this. But I think it's safe to say that it's going to keep your aircraft on the ground. The flip side of what I said earlier, people were saying, oh, don't worry, your aircraft only weighs like 1,800 pounds, and you got 3 of these, and surely they can hold 1,800 pounds. I would say you're not worried so much about holding down 1,800 pounds. What you're worried about is a strong enough wind coming along that now your wing starts generating lift, and it's going to lift off the ground and also blow backwards into something else. These are the 2 things you got to worry about. Even though it weighs like close to 2,000 pounds, you can grab hold of the prop near the hub and pull that thing across the ground. So it doesn't take very much force to get it rolling. So you want to stop that. The second thing is, if it did happen to want to fly, you have upward lift on it. You got to remember, at fairly low air speeds, fairly low in the realm of flying, actually quite high, but very attainable by some thunderstorms. We're talking like 60 miles an hour. That thing is going to be able to hold up somewhere around 2,500 pounds or more. And so that's a lot of force that it's got to hold down. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that, you know, it's not just trying to hold down 1,600 pounds or 1,800 pounds. It's actually trying to hold down quite a bit more if that wing starts producing any kind of lift. Just for thought. But I would definitely say, do not worry about that steel threaded portion pulling out of this aluminum portion. I really cannot see that happening. The rest of your airplane is going to be wrecked before you separate those 2 items. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. It is now back to finishing up these parts. We're finally done with step 1. I get to mark that off. Now we get to remove the bluing and deburr the parts. I'm not looking forward to that part of the process, but it's a necessary evil. On the downside, I seem to misplace my piece of sandpaper while moving my shop around so that I could fit the tail cone in here, and I can't locate it. And even more annoying, I cannot locate the packaging that it came out of, so all the other sandpaper has gone AWOL as well. Alright, now this piece is up to where it's supposed to be, which is good because I need it on the very next page. As soon as I get done, the wife and I get done drilling these longerons or these J stiffeners that run down the length of the skin. And so we're still working on that. There's 3 of them and we're about halfway through. The line down these has to line up with the hole, so you have to hold it and push it into place as you drill each hole. And I'm unable to reach that and hold it in place while drilling at the same time. So based on that, I would say this is probably most definitely a 2-person job, no matter who you are. I guess if I flipped it over, I might be able to reach in from the top and do it. But I was worried about the stiffness since there's nothing really holding it. I feel like it's too flexible right now. In the next step, when you attach the left-hand skin, you flip it over, but at that point you have a skin supporting one side with stiffeners being held in as well. So that greatly increases the stiffness compared to what it's like right now. And I just feel like if I flipped it over to drill the longerons at this point, it would just be too flexible and I'd end up with something misaligned. Okay, that's going to do it for this video. Usually I try to keep it to 2 days now and avoid these long 3-day videos, but I keep forgetting to do the end of the video, and I'm really tired at the end of the long day, especially on the weekends, and so I head off to bed without doing the outro or the end of the video. But I made a lot of good progress in this video, as you can see. I'm out of Clecos, so to drill these J stiffeners over on the left side here, I need to go buy more Clecos. Hopefully the 3 local builders that are working on 10s, I know one's complete, the other's near complete, and probably has some Clecos to sell me. And then the guy I usually buy them from, I think he might be running low. I'm sure he doesn't want to sell all his Clecos in case he needs some later on. So hopefully I can do that sometime this week and not lose too much working time on the tail cone here. But other than that, everything's coming together nicely. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. There's probably some of it cut out because I forgot to re-aim the camera when I flipped the fuselage back over, or the tail cone back over. But other than that, I actually enjoy working on this, and I think the wings are going to be the same way, where it's a lot of large pieces that come together fairly quickly and make something big, and that's just awesome. Like, I think a lot of people kind of are like, oh, go with the quick build wings so you don't have to do the fuel tank. After watching the video on that, I'm not too worried about it, and I think the quick build fuselage, while it saves a lot of time, would also rob me of the experience of building something big that comes together fairly quickly. And I can also see where, even though I've been slow on this and it's been over a year, I could see the kits from now on taking less time to get something done, basically. I mean, there'll be more parts to drill and deburr, but at the same time, stuff will seem to just come together quickly like this has. So, yeah, I need more Clecos. Hopefully I get those. Hopefully you enjoyed watching the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and do so. If you don't want the notifications, that's fine. Don't click the bell icon in that case. And basically you'll know I put up a new video. Instead of getting an email, you'll see a little dot next to my channel in the channels that you're subscribed to. If you're thinking about building an RV or any aircraft and you haven't settled on RV yet, I highly recommend this. The plans are fantastic, at least for the later aircraft like the 10, the 14, the 12 are all going to be really good plans. Some of the ones slightly older than that are still good. Stuff like the RV-10 and the 12 are supposedly really refined, very little match drilling if at all. Very easy to do, especially if all the blind rivets that are used in the 12. As long as you don't need 4 seats, there's no reason to go with the 10. The performance is just, it's hard to find aircraft. Everybody says when people are comparing a Vans to something else that's not apples to apples. Well, it's hard to find performance-wise aircraft that are as good as this, especially in the kit world. In the certified world, people are always comparing them to aircraft that used cost almost as much as this does new. The only deal is you get to start flying right away rather than work on this. But you get an aircraft that you know inside and out because you built it, an aircraft that you can work on and because you know it inside and out, so you save quite a bit of money working on it, and it's new. Unlike cars where I say don't buy a new car, an aircraft, if you can get away with it, definitely go for a new aircraft. As long as it's not the first of its model. Like, don't necessarily buy a Cessna 172A. Or at least that's the advice that pretty much everybody passes around. Anyway, if you're thinking about it, I highly recommend Vans. If you do, please use my kit number below in the description at the time you purchase. Vans will send me $100 as kind of a thank you for spreading the word. They really don't do much on advertisement other than going to different air shows and talking to people face to face, and they'd rather have you be persuaded to buy their kit by somebody who has experience doing that, so you know you're not just being sold a bunch of advertisement. There really hasn't been anything difficult that I've done so far. The tools I'm using requires more manual labor. You can spend more money and speed stuff up, get quick builds, whatever. And that $100 that they send me doesn't come out of anything you're purchasing. It's not tacked onto your bill. It's from the company as a thank you for basically showing you how easy it is to build and saying you can do it too. So far I don't think anybody's taken me up on that. If they have, Vans hasn't sent me any notification of it. But that's okay, because I'm still going to be doing this for fun of it. And really, I mean, $100, that buys me some fuel caps, if you want to know expense-wise. Also, down in the description, there is a link to my build log that's up to date on what I'm doing, because the videos are going to lag behind just a little bit. It has what step I'm on, how many hours I put in, how many rivets I've driven, how much time I've spent researching some stuff here and there. I break it all down. I also have now a statistics page that I've added that breaks it down by subkit, like how much time did I spend on making the elevators or the rudder, how many rivets were within that kit to put everything together, which is pretty interesting. It looks like the elevators took the most time so far out of any kit that I've worked on, which I'm not going to lie, they were quite a bit of work for what they were. And that's part of the reason why I think over at the Plane Lady channel, they actually skipped the elevators and said, we'll come back to those after we complete the tail cone. And that was a good move on their part, I think. I did them early because I was working on the rudder and I wanted to do all the Pro Seal at one time. So I got the rudder up to the Pro Seal step and went on to the elevators. And they were a bit rough. They're not impossible, but they take the most work out of everything in this kit, definitely. Like bending the longerons that go here, that's kind of easy compared to working on the elevators. And for them, they were most worried about the trim tabs. It requires you to bend some metal, but it's not anything that you can't handle. It's not the end of the world. Doing the foam ribs and getting those Pro Sealed in, it's not that hard. It's just stuff that you really haven't done before. That's your first introduction to it, really. So that's why it's kind of daunting, I think, for people, and why they say it's hard, and that's where I guess some people mess up. And also, that's where you'll run into rivets on the ribs, get down to a real narrow point, and you'll almost need a special bucking bar for that has kind of an angle that you can slide into that narrow area. And I got away with using some stuff laying around the shop. I'm probably still going to buy that bucking bar for working on the wings, and when I do, I'll show it to you, and I'll probably introduce that tool in a separate video back before my elevator build videos. So if you're going through it in order, you'll kind of go like, hey, you know, I should really get this tool. I'm going to need this tool. And having the right tool helps a lot. I mean, it almost makes this to where a child can do it. And a lot of times I have my kids out here helping me. I will say, overall, I've been letting them help for the fun of it. Today, drilling these J-stiffeners, that's the first time I've needed two people, really, because I had to have somebody inside moving these around to line them up, the center line on this up with the holes in the skin. I was not able to reach underneath and hold these in the correct position and hold the drill in the correct position. Now that it's upright, Yeah, I can reach over here and do it, but I really can't get my head down to the hole to see if it's properly aligned. So even in this position, it's still really a two-person job to get this moved while you can see where the line is on the hole. Maybe these two. The middle and the top I can do by myself, but this bottom one, my arm, as long as my arms are not long enough to reach and got my head down there where I can see where the line is. So just be aware, you will need two people when you get to that part. Unless you come up with something amazing that I haven't thought of. Anyway, like I said, that build log's in there. Go ahead and check that out. You can steal it for your own use if you want, if you're building or going to build. That's why I put it up there. It has some cool little pie charts in it, some breakdowns of numbers. If you look at the cells, I have it set up to where if you tell it what your start date is, you can estimate based on the average number of hours that you've worked so far, and just cool stuff like that. It also has basically what tools I bought when, and what I've spent money on. Like when I buy primer, I put that in there. When I buy, like for example, that's replacement part there, I'm going to put that in there. There's a tab for money spent, basically, and roughly what it goes to. I don't break down the tools individually. I just say like, hey, I purchased tools and it was this amount. But I do also have a list of tools of like, here's what I've used so far. That way you can look at it and go, okay, I'm planning on doing the tail cone. This kit comes with this stuff. What is just bogus extra stuff that I don't need in that toolkit? Or should I go out and buy my tools individually? So you can look at that and figure all that out. That's all I have. Thanks for watching. Hopefully I get those clicos and I'll be out here working on it tomorrow.